Ja, werte Zuseher, wertes Publikum, wir sollten laut Fahrplan heute eine Person sein. Über Nacht sind es 3 Eidgenossen geworden.
So, according to the Fahrplan, we should be one person. That became 3 overnight, and we're going to hear them talk about Netzpolitik. So we have Simon here from Digital Society Switzerland in the middle, Sabrina from CCC Switzerland, and then Patrick from the Swiss Pirate Party. Last year, we heard about 2 referendums on mass surveillance, and today we're going to find out how these laws have been accepted or denied in the referendum, and how direct democracy worked in this case or not in Switzerland. So please welcome Patrick. Welcome to our small update. It's, as you said, the second time we're here. I'm happy that this many people are interested. So we're going to have a quick look at how referendums work in Switzerland, so you don't get confused by the terminology. Then I'm going to talk about the Nachrichtendienstgesetz. We're going to talk about the BÜPF, the other law, and then we're going to look at this one legal case about mass surveillance that we have running, and briefly 5 currently interesting topics that are laws that are now debated in the big chamber and small chamber of the Swiss Parliament. So in Switzerland, there are 3 possibilities how a law can come about. One, it could come from the people, so a national referendum. Then the ruling government can pass a law, and in the parliament you can start a motion which is going to be treated by the parliament. Then there are these different layers here, and then there's the Vernehmlassung, which is a public request for comments where anyone can basically comment on a law that's in debate in parliament currently. So, to the Nachrichtendienstgesetz. Last year, we collected signatures to force a national referendum. Unfortunately, we lost that referendum because we didn't have any money. Nobody wanted to invest into this political fight, and it's just not the political climate to be against surveillance laws. So 50% of the people voted yes to this referendum, but one small highlight, the people below 40 voted no. So there's a chance in the upcoming years to do something about this.
Little correction, it was 65% of people who voted yes. Welcome to the part about the surveillance law BÜPF. Please excuse my raw voice. First, I'll tell you about what happened until now. Then I will tell you about the demonstration in 2014 and the referendum in 2016. And then we will be talking about how things may continue. Don't make the surveillance state great again is certainly the big thing. And that's because in our constitution, we have the right to privacy guaranteed. And unfortunately, the law about mass surveillance, named BÜPF, will violate that. And we've had a law until 2014, which allowed a certain extent of mass surveillance and preemptive data storage, but that didn't go far enough. And we had a previous presentation which you can look up online with more details about that. This revision of the BIPF had included extending the preemptive data storage, permission for Trojans, and many more. And under the threat of terrorists and more, the council, the parliament, didn't think too hard about it and passed it very quickly. So we're not very surprised that there are quotes in the newspapers that it was more controversial in the parliament whether to pay service providers for what it costs them to provide this mass surveillance than whether or not a federal Trojan is appropriate. When we were talking about the electronic patient data, we were invited, but barely anybody considered what the actual consequences were.
So there is also a question about where and how this data should be saved in the future. There are, of course, going to be multiple providers. Well, if I flat share and we share an internet connection, then I have to collect data about my flat share mates, and can I store that in Africa? Or so that's still not really quite regulated, but it seems it works for them. So we said stop, we don't want this, and originating from the Pirate Party, we started this motion to vote no for the BIPF referendum, and also to educate the people in the parliament about the technical details of this law. And we were able to bring a lot of other parties on board from left to right across the spectrum. And we want to have a serious debate about this law. So this here is what it looks like. So this is the chief of federal police who wants to bring us the GovWare. Here you see signs from the protest. But we're in Switzerland, so this is also what it looks like. So let me go back here. So 2014, when the parliament was in session, the law should have been discussed. We managed to push the discussion back 1 year, but that also meant, well, we had this debate ongoing for an extra year. And in the end, when the parliament voted, it was 160 to 120 for the motion. And we had 100 days for the referendum to force a vote of the Swiss people to collect 50,000 valid signatures. But because the NDG law referendum wasn't that far back, a lot of people were exhausted. But I mean, we couldn't just let this BIPF law happen. So we launched the referendum fight anyway. Thank God we managed to find a group that supported our referendum. I want to thank the PEP Foundation, who donated both time and money. Also, for example, the SWICO, who especially financed a large part of our efforts. And of course, thanks to all the individual activists who helped here. So we had a new big chamber in the parliament, and we could hold a press conference in the media room of our parliaments. So thank you for helping us organize this. And so that was our CCC club room called Röschibach, which was turned into an office basically for the BIPF referendum. And I want to thank Ari for organizing all the office work there. And so these are helpers here who are sorting these signature documents that we have to file. Together with the Digitale Gesellschaft, we set up a platform where you could download these signature sheets, and basically from the government you get nothing. There's a small note and nothing else. So we also developed a tool to help us keep track of the paperwork, and we had to develop our own, because even though this software exists from other parties, they didn't want to give it to us in case it fell into the wrong hands. So now we have this self-written software, which actually Patrick here developed, and if you want to launch your own referendum in Switzerland, you're welcome to ask him for the software.
Well, so the conservative parties fought or did very, very little until the end. And that was quite a damper for us. We mobilized everything and invested a lot. But together with the Digital Society and Amnesty International, we created a video to explain to people what this referendum really is about. She's got so many tabs open. She'll find it. She'll find it. But yes. Do not fear, Miss Miller. We've got the perp. You've got him? Oh yeah, yeah. We find him. No worries. There. There's the bike. It's still there. It's still there. Are you filming all of this? There. What is that? Turn this off now. Yeah, yes. I Not going to translate that. Still looking. There we go. All right. It's not my laptop, see? So we were talking about the conservative parties, and to be fair, there was a core group and they did a lot, but altogether, the conservative parties which were helping out only reached a third of their quota of what they promised. And that was a big problem, and it would be a big part of why we failed to get enough signatures for the referendum. We didn't know that at the time, and we talked about it, and we got a tip to hire people who go collect signatures. But that means gathering a lot of money, and that was already recognized as being a crucial moment. And we had to mobilize over 30,000 Swiss francs in short amount of time. But we managed, and then the next question was, who would we hire? And we found two organizations and a couple of students from various students. But, well, we still managed, and it would be interesting to look at how in Switzerland you can organize such a referendum. So, having solved that, we are on the final stretch, and we got more and more signatures. And we had people working day and night to verify those signatures. And I really want to thank every single one of those people. That's big. That deserves a big, big, big thank you for all the work they put in verifying those signatures. We were working, and it was raining, and we gathered and gathered like crazy. And then we get the news that something wasn't working out. Daily, we had to do a lot of work. It was a nightmare, and everything was organized very broadly and agilely, and suddenly it turned into a bureaucratic monster, and there were people who wouldn't even acknowledge being connected, and that took a lot of time, and a lot of people tried to go figure out why our help was rejected. And we went there, and there was it was a nightmare. We had contracts guaranteeing a certain number of signatures, and that just wasn't there. Things weren't there. We tried to organize everything at short notice, but some of us were even such under shock that we really just had to sit back and calm down. And still, we tried, and we did everything to get everything verified in time. We had to go to every little last community somewhere, to the local governments to get it verified, to get it. We had another bunch of signatures which we had to do on shortest notice, just before the referendum, before the deadline, and that was very consternating. That led to a big consternation, and we didn't feel good about it. And we roughly had 55,000 signatures, and we went and handed it in, and unfortunately only 41,000 were verified, and that didn't quite work out. But we are going to be invited to the next consultation in spring of 2017. And we're not going to give up. We have the option of a people's initiative. We do think that even if mass surveillance weakens our democracy, we can still work against it. And please, everyone, do not surrender, do not give up, stay active, protect our personal freedom, online as offline, and keep working.
Hello. I'm gonna say something about our case against mass surveillance. So we've just heard about how we use the tools of our democracy to fight against mass surveillance, but we also have a different approach by basically going the way of the courts. So this is a quick summary of what metadata in Switzerland are currently collected today. So the important comparison compared to Germany is, well, you're discussing about 4 or 8 weeks. In Switzerland, it's more like 6 months versus 12 years. Well, fortunately, we will manage to get that bit thrown out. So we contacted the service that collects the metadata for the government and asked for the data about 6 individual people this service from the government didn't follow through, and so we came to the federal court, and they discussed our case for a long time and extended the case to 5 judges. But our notion was declined. But there's one good thing that happened. So this is actually the first legal case in Switzerland which actually says that that mass surveillance is a serious offense against privacy. So this is what we received, and now for a few weeks we went to the Supreme Court of Switzerland, and well, we expect that these 6 individual people could be exempt from mass surveillance, but of course that's not what we want. If we don't get what we want in front of the Supreme Court, we're going to the European Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. And of course our goal is to free all the Swiss people from mass surveillance, and if we get this case in front of Strasbourg, then there's 2 possibilities for the Swiss government. So they could remove just these 6 people from Dragnet surveillance, which, I mean, would be technically possible, but unlikely, or the other way would be to throw out the law altogether.
Of course, if you remove all those 6 people from mass surveillance, why wouldn't you remove any others from mass surveillance? It stays exciting, but it's going to take some more time. We only moved towards the Supreme Court a few days ago, so everything of this is going to take some more time. And I think that's it for me, and I'm going to hand it over back to Patrick again. In the past few months, or years actually, the magic firewalls have been keeping us busy, because for politicians they are a tool to keep us all safe, and in reality they look more like the image we just saw. In reality, we've also reached the gambling laws, and the goal of these laws is to protect gamblers from themselves. All the gambling wins should be treated the same. Currently, casinos are not taxed, and online gambling should be permitted, and the same as has been done to offline casinos should be kept. Our main criticism of this law is, in fact, that currently they are trying to block non-licensed online games, and that requires firewall infrastructure. The cantons also, that is the states of Switzerland, also benefit from this gambling, from lotteries. They, in 2012, earned almost 600 million. Casinos paid another 320 million Swiss francs to funds for into the National Pension Fund. So, as said, it's supposed to protect the gamblers from themselves. If I have such a license, then I must be able to block certain people from playing. It's supposed to be kept lucrative, well, for the state, that is. ever fewer people are playing the lottery because there's not an instant feedback. You buy your lottery ticket and that takes some time. But since we want to keep that, the goal is to prohibit newer models of games. The fact that this is a problem in the first place is that the entire internet branch of industry has let this slide and basically not realized that the gambling laws would affect them at all. Then there was a consultation about the telecommunications law. There's a partial revision. They want to change certain parts of the law, not the entire law. But of course, even here they want to include firewalls and blockers. Actually, the goal was to strengthen the laws of the rights of consumers and to deregulate the usage of the bandwidth and to lessen the burden of administration to service providers. The consultation is over. Again, our main criticism is blocks and firewalls. The fact that net neutrality is not part of the is not really part of the law, and no protection against metadata collection. We do have some blocks already in place in Switzerland since 2007. We have a blockage list. There is a self-declaration by the community of all providers that they stick with this block list. And now Parliament is thinking that this this blacklist is not good enough, and that the voluntary aspect is not good enough, and it should be that they should be forced. And this list should be updated every 3 months, which, as we know, is way too slow for the internet. And of course, then there's the darknet. And these DNS blocks are very easy to circumvent, and I've in fact answered the consultation by putting a guide to circumvention into our answer, which means it's now officially archived in the Federal Archive.
So they plan to force that it has to be declared when things are zero rated or there are under other rated data streams, but we don't want discrimination of data streams. So in the consultation for this law, the big providers published a code of conduct where they say, well, we do net neutrality, but in fact nothing changed at all. Basically, they do the same thing they do now. And the last point is, well, we've previously discussed this last year's session. Balthasar Glättli entered a motion into the parliament to basically put net neutrality into law, but it was thrown out with the because supposedly it wasn't necessary. Then are changes to what metadata is saved, and also who can have informations from the stored metadata. Well, we want basically that only billing metadata relevant to billing can be saved at all. And we also want that the customer controls what data is stored, and only the customer can access it so that the provider can't give the data to anyone else. Also, well, this provision is also bullshit. And then there's the problem with the copyright law, which is being revised. So the idea was to have a more modern version of the copyright law and fight piracy more effectively. They put 3 strikes in there. And then they wanted to promote the use of digital services. So just a few bits from this law. So it's currently in a really bad shape. Many people commented in the consultation. There were over 1,000 entities that entered their comments at the and in all in all, the report in the end that was published was 8,000 pages long. Well, the paper they had to sift through, they were astoundingly fast. So our main point of criticism, sort of touched on this already, is well, internet filtering is part of this law too. So let's say take down and stay down notices. This is going to be formalized. So this means if you receive a takedown notice, you have to ensure that this bit of information can't be published again. So there are ideas there to criminalize the customers, and then there are kind of access rights. So, for example, if a user has been warned 3 times, then a judge can access the metadata from this user. So this is a bit of the backstory. 2012, from pressure from the music industry from the US, a working group was started. I mean, that's the general approach when you actually don't want to do anything. So there were regular meetings from this working group. The protocols are public, online, by the way. From Swiss internet politics, barely anyone was invited. Maybe 1 or 2 of the big ones, but not really any relevant representation. So they met over and over again until November 2015, where the public consultation was started. With the public consultation, everybody has 3 months' time to study the law and enter a comment. And, well, if you're a big party, you can also ask for an extension if you miss this 3-month deadline. So the Swiss Democratic Party did that, for example. Usually, when a consultation is open or completed, then the results are analyzed internally, and then there's a summary report. And here there was, however, a meeting of this Augur 12 group, and through a Freedom of Information Act request, we were able to access the meeting minutes. And we found out that they had access to the report that was supposed to be public, but they had access to it earlier, which is not okay. So a lot of individuals, also libraries, and commented that it's stupid that there's a fee that libraries have to pay now in this proposed law, for example. There's the Institut für Geistiges Eigentum, part of the federal government, of the administration, and they said, well, basically reform is good, they said, but of course everyone has different opinions about how this reforms should be made. So officially there's still time until the summer for this working group to decide how to move forward with this law. So as I've said, all the data on the public proceedings you can find under this link. So I've made a summary of what we want. So we don't want any net bans. We want to keep downloads not being illegal as it currently is. So, I mean, the revision won't explicitly criminalize the downloads, but you have to kind of balance it out in the other direction. So we really want to have that in there explicitly. Then we want the right to have information. We want to remove the rights of Verwertungsgesellschaften to access records on normal people. Then if takedown notices will remain in the law, we want to have penalties for abusing the sending of takedown notices. Then the administration of the Verwertungsgesellschaften is way too big. We want to lower that down to 10%, and you shouldn't have to pay fees explicitly to the Verwertungsgesellschaften. So you have musicians should be able to basically sell their own music directly without delegating the rights to the Verwertungsgesellschaft.
There's a very big problem with unclear copyright situation on works where the author can't be found or has died. And of course, we're also considering things that are things like movies as well, which, yeah, we've talked about three strikes. Works that are made by public offices or the administration should not be covered under copyright. And you should be protected from responsibility so that free Wi-Fi access points are possible too. Well, data protection, it might not be sexy, but it's damn necessary. So what's it about specifically? Since several decades, we've had a data protection law in Switzerland, and we've been thinking about modernizing that. There is a official who is in charge of data protection and public law. And he can tell companies that do not care about data protection that they're being bad companies. And we have a fairly weak data protection law, despite everybody praising the data protection laws in Switzerland. In the pinch, it really doesn't go that far. How should I put this? There's a certain set of data which the administration can work on, and I should be able to keep my rights about this data, and I should be able to ask for that data from company or administration. And these companies and administration should not be able to sell that data to someone, unlike here in Germany, where poor communities can sell data to earn some extra money. The last one lasted for 23 years, so we're assuming that the new data protection law will last for quite a while. And the consultation is now running since a few days ago, and we expect that it will ask for more power for law enforcement and the administration. And we expect that it will orient itself in the EU data protection law. And So, so they expect to use the market locating principle, so that when a Swiss company sells something in Germany, the German law also applies, and so our law would also apply to companies selling in Switzerland. I can should be able to take my data with me and give it to another company if I want to, and be in control. There's also the European Council Convention, and the central element there is the consent to data manipulation. And if a company does not conform to data protection laws, then there should be automatic notification and appropriate laws. And that still runs until April, and we will make sure to fight for our stance in that, and we'll see what comes from that. And for the end, I just want to quickly talk about e-voting. At this time, there are 2 systems in Switzerland which are being evaluated, used as an evaluation. And basically, the federal government has argued for using e-voting to make it easier for Switzerlanders who live abroad to vote in Swiss votes. And currently it's limited to a certain percentage of voters. And these 2 systems could not be more different. Currently there is a closed source Spanish system which is being offered by the Swiss Post Office, the mail, and then there is a open sourced version which the Canton of Geneva is developing. Unfortunately, universal verificability is not a given in either of the systems. And the goal is to have e-voting established in 2/3 of all cantons in 2019. But keep in mind that in 2005, somebody wrote that we should have it by 2010, and then they said in 2013, and then they said 2017, so it'll take some time. But basically it boils down to this. My political views, how I vote, who I elect, is part of my privacy, and that's difficult in e-voting. We have to be sure that my vote was counted, and not just that it was counted, but that it was counted the way I wanted it to. And we can say the devil is in the details with e-voting, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to create a data protection compliant e-voting system. There is individual verifiability. I, as a citizen, should be able to verify that the system was counted and entered into the system appropriately. If I vote on paper, I can not go through the ballot box and confirm which one that mine was counted. But of course, I can just go to my community and join and help with the counting and observe. And I can see that the process is working fine. And that's good enough, because if the process is working, my vote was counted appropriately. And it would be nice if that was the case with e-voting too. As I said, there's 3 points. Was my vote cast as intended? Was it recorded as cast? And was it counted as it was recorded? In America, a few weeks ago, there was a recount, and the technician's in the house. In America, a few weeks ago, there was a recount of the election. And in the regions where e-voting computers have been used, of course, there's a difference. E-voting is about I vote from home, and with election computers, I go to the office and use the machine there. But there's no paper, and I cannot actually do a recount. I can verify my database, I can rebuild my database, but that requires a paper trail to actually verify the vote. There are some inherent problems. E-voting is very complex. It's not understandable to the average user. I can't explain that to my grandmother, how it works. If you don't know cryptography and know it well, you're not going to have a chance to understand it. And of course, then there's bring your own device. All devices can be at different patch levels. They can have various malware infect them. And this is always going to be a problem with e-voting. It's not necessarily a problem of e-voting as such, but it's a problem of the computers which will be used to do e-voting. And of course, even a perfectly designed system can still be implemented incorrectly. And of course, that means the code, and generally the code would have to be open sourced and audited by an independent instance. And the Canton of Geneva is being progressive here, and there is a Spanish solution, but the Canton of Geneva is working on an open source solution which can be found at this GitHub code, the GitHub repo.
So further components will be added to the system. It's generally very good that the Canton of Geneva developing this thing and also helps other cantons develop this system to their needs. So that was it. Thank you for taking the time, and thanks for all the Swiss people being here especially. So there are two things on the chaos side, and the other thing is from the Digital Society Switzerland, we write a newsletter once a month to sum up with what has happened in Switzerland. So I really want to recommend you to sign up to this newsletter to know what's going on. So you can contact us at the Congress if you want to talk to us. You can see here. And of course, I'm here to answer some questions if you have any. And but right after this, after Hall 1, if you go back to Hall 1, that's below the food court, we got a room and we can have a chat about Netzpolitik in Switzerland. And we'd be really glad if you show up there. But of course, right after this talk, you'll have another very interesting session in this room, and of course, but I would like the Swiss people to please come to workshop, and everyone else, please follow the talk about Netzpolitik in Austria. So, question from the audience. So, to Sabrina, you said something about that referendum before. You said there was some sabotage with the part of the signatures. So, what's up with that? Were those saboteurs, or were those just people trying to make a quick buck? Well, this is a question we've asked ourselves. There are some very emotional responsible. The correct response I can give you is these are people who made a contract with us, and they told us that they had these numbers, and in fact, maybe they were simply just overwhelmed by the talks, and we can't really say anything as to their motives. So.
Weitere Fragen? Gibt es Fragen aus dem Internet? Keine Fragen. Bitte.
Ja, Entschuldigung. Ich würde gerne eine Frage stellen zum Thema Datenschutz.
I would like to ask about the data protection law.
Und zwar, es wundert mich persönlich sehr.
I'm surprised, actually very surprised, because I have a little bit to do with that and been dealing with this for quite some time, that Switzerland seems to be having this highly backwards law up to now. And how did that happen? How come Switzerland is behind on that part of law? Well, generally you can say that Switzerland works, but it works slowly. Direct democracy is exhausting and it takes a lot of time. That's one part of the answer, of course. And the other is, we've realized after 23 years that, yes, actually, we can extend data protection. I don't know where you were 23 years ago, but internet used to be a lot slower back then. And I do think it's actually kind of nice that now we've decided to strengthen our data protection and also our main data protector. And I mean, I've said his competences is basically recommendations, and giving him the right to actually punish people, that's a good thing, and data protection needs to have a real bite.
So a note here, we've heard some complaints about e-voting, and I do research on this topic. So yeah, there are definitely a few problems, and I can't personally find out which code, which program was installed there, and that it really only does what I want. But there are a few things that actually are problems that have been solved. So, for example, the end-to-end encryption thing, there is such a thing as end-to-end verification. So there are some risks, but in other societies, they have decided to accept some risk for technical development. And I want to invite you all to an assembly tomorrow at 4:15 p.m. And I'm going to explain some of the issues that have been solved with e-voting. Where is this assembly? It's in Hall G, if it's not changed. So there are going to be a number of talks about decentralized networking, and we'll also cover e-voting.
I'm more interested in the revision of copyright law. Is there the intention to work together with artists? Because I'm pretty sure I know a couple of people who will be against that revision, and probably quite a few more artists who would be against copyright law if they understood it. And are there efforts in that direction? And I think that's a voice where you couldn't argue for protecting the artists if the artists were against it. What I can tell you is that we have worked together with an artist for the communiques of the Pirate Party, but we will gladly get back to you. But the problem is that a lot of these are organized in groups, and these groups are really close to industry, even if the artists themselves aren't. I have another question. What's your position on Trojans? Not computers, but implants. Pacemakers, insulin pumps, hearing aids. Why do you think there's a difference in this one negative aspect? Well, if I have a Bluetooth deactivatable pacemaker, somebody dies. If I, you know, if I deny a computer, then, well, the computer's off unless that computer controls something. Well, thank you for answering that question. What's your position on that? I don't know if that's going to make a lot of sense, but here goes. It's a question I haven't thought about a lot. At its most basic, a hearing aid I can remove, pacemaker I can't. Pacemakers are, as far as I know, you can calibrate them over radio, but you have to be really close. At the same time, we know that in RFID, distance is a relative thing. I think really first 1 or 2 people are probably going to have to die before a debate gets going on that. At its more basic, everybody has to decide if they want to be a cyborg. And yes, looking at it this way, a pacemaker is being part machine-assisted. Definitely an interesting question, but I think first we have to have a few incidents before we get any sort of debate on that. But it's a really interesting question. So thanks.
Okay, last question from me. So I have diabetes, and I have had an insult point at some point. So Switzerland has a lot of pharma industry, so I'm sure they have a lot of good solutions to this problem, and I can also look at my blood sugar on my phone and in the cloud. Are you up to date how these pharma companies protect your data? Well, we mentioned this before. We were invited by the National Health Service to consult on the law about the digital patient dossier and file. Yeah. So find information about this on the CCC page of Switzerland or of the Zurich section. Further questions?
In an earlier talk about forcing routers on customers, it was said that if you want to fight it, you have to present alternatives. Talking about gambling, online gambling, we're against the DNS blocks, but do you have an alternative on protecting people and on providing the tax returns? Because both of these are wanted, right? Well, so how should we say this? Currently, you're supposed to get a license, which is a good step, because that already means you have a certain duty, and the illegal offerings, well, they'll always be there, and there's nothing to be done about that, not even with DNS blocking. And, well, there are many things we've thought about. Apart from classic net blockers, you could delist them from search engines, but really the more important thing is to stop the flow of money, not censor the net. But just to be right, this isn't about illegal games as such, but about non-Swiss companies. The point is to keep the profits in Switzerland, and censoring the net is definitely the wrong way to do this. And we showed them different ways to deal with this, but beginning of January is when we're going to see how successful we were. One last short question, please, if possible.
Okay, I'll try. So, in Netzpolitik, everything's going to shit right now, and you said you want to try to change some things with less inputs, but I mean, realistically, probably nothing is going to happen. So the question is, are we really planning to, or do we have the possibility to start from zero again? So we haven't actually talked about a new public referendum. We just haven't talked about this yet. And so just to go over this again, at the beginning we were few, now we are many, and we've started clearing up technical details with members of parliament, and this is also something that's a movement that's still growing. We have to invest the time first until we see some changes. But I think everyone that really wants to play a part in this really should go ahead and do that. And please come forward and talk to us. Actually, there is one referendum that's on the table, and well, first I think we have to catch our breath before we really move forward with something this big. So thank you, Patrick, Sabrina, and Simon, for your talk. Warm round of applause.